Okay, do you guys see this? Here, let me pause that. Okay. We're gonna see what the fuck Cardin just sent me. Some react video. Or some video. Oh, let me make that bigger. What the fuck? What? What? This is an hour long! What am I doing? Why is this an hour long? You expect me to be here for an hour? Trust? No! I have to be here for an hour.
Square is buried deep into the culture of Japan. Originally a spin-off from Masafumi Miyamoto's father's Powerline construction firm, for over 30 years its games have helped power the rise of Japanese games development. There are no shortage of games that live under the Square Enix banner, but none as big as Final Fantasy. From our Western perspective, there's an air of mythos around the company.
How do I turn on subsetting? How do I turn it on? It's already on, but the subtitles aren't showing.
Except the truth
it's already
behind the
in
series'
English.
title is that it was named Final Fantasy as it was Square's make or break game to avoid impending bankruptcy. And even if the real answer has more to do with creating an acronym that could be pronounced by both Eastern and Western audiences, it's that first story that gets told. That's the legacy of this series. Stories about adventures that get passed from generation to generation. As nearby as the arcades of Akihabara, and as far as the playgrounds of Europe. As the Final Fantasy series has moved from numeral to numeral, there have been high points and low. But with each new game comes the promise of a new story, a new myth.
Okay, I will give it an honest chance.
The story of what happened with Final Fantasy XIV is one such myth. What we know about it comes from old reviews, archived message board threads, and through conversations with those who were there. The reason for this is that the original version of Final Fantasy XIV doesn't exist anymore. Unlike the vast majority of other old games, there is no way of playing it. It was redacted, painted over. Where once stood a game that threatened to sink the Final Fantasy brand forever, now stands the second most popular subscription MMO in the world. And as the years pass us, the myth of that original version and its incredible redemption story are at risk of disappearing. How did it all happen? How did the same studio that shipped a broken mess turn it all around in 2 years? Why did they make the decision to keep the old version still alive while secretly working on a brand new game? And how did they manage to make all of this, the redesign and rebirth, part of the game's lore? We knew this was a story worth telling, not only for those who were there to see it all go down, but for the millions of you who have never heard about this, who never knew the extraordinary lengths the development team went to save this game.
So
wow,
we
that's
did
actually
just
crazy.
that. Pack your bags, friends. NoClip is heading to Tokyo.
They were working on 2 games at the same time? That's actually pretty crazy. Alright, this better be good. A 3-part series, listen. I don't have enough fucking chicken tenders in the world to be here for 3 parts of this. Which reminds me, I'm gonna finish that. I'll give it 15 minutes. How about that? It's about Final Fantasy, so it should be alright. What is it about the creation of the game? I'll link to the video. Yeah, let me give you guys a link. Here you go. Oh, I don't even want to watch that scene. It's so sad.
Hello Hello and welcome to Shinjuku, Tokyo, home of Godzilla, restaurants full of dancing robots, and Square Enix, one of the most prolific video game companies in the world. For the past few months I've been playing catch up with this story, playing the latest version of the game, talking to players, and watching community retrospective series like the Speakers Network's fantastic fall and rise of Final Fantasy XIV. My goal to make sure we asked the right questions when we sat down with the team. During our time here in Shinjuku, we're going to talk to everyone from the engineers who worked on the original game to localization leads, community managers, and even the CEO of the company. All to allow them the opportunity to tell their side of this fascinating story. The fall and rise of Final Fantasy XIV happened in real time in front of millions of people around the world. But we wanted to know about this story from an entirely new perspective, from inside the corporate machine that made it happen, that led to its terrible launch and ultimately its incredible rebirth.
My name is Michael Christopher Koji Fonks. I am the English localization lead for Final Fantasy XIV. My middle name being Koji, it's not something I gave myself, it's a name my father gave me. My father was stationed in Japan for 2 years in the Navy when he was young. Went back to the States. My mom had me. They wanted to give me a Japanese name. The family was having none of that, so they kind of snuck it in the middle name, but then they always called me Koji. And so I guess the joke was on the rest of the family. My dad being in the Navy didn't really learn a lot about
Japanese names are pretty exotic, actually. I love it.
The language, so I always knew that my name was Japanese, but beyond that, I really didn't know anything about Japan. But there was always that little seed in there. And then when I got into high school, there's a Japanese class.
He's the reason the game is in English?
Oh,
wow.
Japan.
That's pretty cool.
Japanese. If I study Japanese, I can play all those cool Japanese games that never come out over in America. And it kind of just snowballed from there. When I graduated from high school, I took a trip to Japan for 3 weeks, homestay type of thing, and I fell in love with it. And during that period, I got to visit a lot of schools and a lot of English classes.
Thank you for the host.
Wow, I could probably do.
We're watching something about Final Fantasy right now.
It wasn't.
We're
as easy
watching
as I thought it was going to
how
be,
the game died and how it came back to
I
life.
spent a couple years at
Thank you so much for the host. How was your
raid?
raid?
Transferred over to Japan. Started over 4 years at a university in Japan.
Wow.
Got my teaching license and yeah.
It's hard work being a teacher.
Yes, I mean I loved it, but I mean it was very draining, and that's why pretty much after you'd go to school 6 in the morning for morning basketball practice because I was the basketball coach because
I got
my principal said, "Hey,
I'll share some
you're
with you,
tall.
Lumpy, okay? How
You're
about
the
that?"
basketball coach." Then you'd get into classes. I mean, I'd have my homeroom class, then I'd have 6 or 7 other classes teaching. Then you'd have after school. All of a sudden, it's there's after school basketball, and then you'd get home and you'd correct. So I was really always at school every day. It was very draining, and I would go home and I would play FF11. It was how I was able to relax, and being able to go into my little room and turn off the lights and put on my headphones and get into that world of Vana'diel was something that helped me escape from the stress.
That's actually so sweet.
Then it just happened to be, one day I was online, checking for 11 related information, and I saw that Square Enix was looking for a translator, and it just kind of, wow, that would be really cool.
Wow, that's actually an awesome story.
Koji wasn't alone. Final Fantasy XIV was launched in 2010, but the story of this game starts 8 years earlier with the launch of Final Fantasy XI, Square's first MMO, the early days of online. Many of the team who worked on 14 started on 11.
One of those was Kasuga-san, who joined the company in 1999 to build a network infrastructure for this fledgling MMO.
自分はネットワークとサーバー担当で入っていて、なので一番最初にやっていたのが、当時プレイステーション2で初めて、厳密にはドリームキャストがその前にあるんですけれども、プレイステーションプラットフォームとしては、オンライン要素が入った初めての時期だったので、
I did have a PlayStation
2でネットワークを作るために、TCP/IP の
I only played one game on it though. It was Tomb Raider.
まだ当時モデム通信の時代だったんで。PPP 通信とか、あと ADSL がちょうど普及し始めた時期だったんで、ADSL の認証として使われた PPPoE とかっていう本当にネットワークの下の部分、今だとあんまし誰も書かないようなところを書くっていう担当で入社してました。
God, that brings back so many memories.
スクエアエニックスって言いますか、スクエアが初めて、オンラインのあれだけの規模の、MMORPG 日本でやるってのはもう本当初めてだったんで、いやもう正直いろんなことがありましたよ当時ね。こんな言っちゃっていいのかな？言っちゃっていいの？OK なの？いいんだ。まずね、どういうことがあったかというと、あの時はMMO とかね、海外で例えばウルティマとかそういった先行事業、
What game is
基本的に PC ですよね。Oh,
this is RuneScape. Wait, is this RuneScape? That is not RuneScape. Looked like it for a second. Ultima. I've never even heard of that.
そういうのを吸ったもんだしていろんなことがありましたんで、ほとんど不可能だとかでよく言われてましたよ、実際には。成功なんて。
11 was my first MMO. I hadn't played one before. I remember purchasing the PlayStation 2 broadband unit because they were all sold out. I ended up paying double on like some Yahoo auction or something like that. Ridiculous, but I had to play it. We got a new internet connection. We were on a regular modem at that time, but because we needed a new modem, we had to upgrade to ISDN 128. But yeah, it was definitely worth it. It was something that was completely new to me,
wow.
But fascinating. And ever since then, I've been into MMOs. That was the gateway drug for me, going in from FF11 and then trying, some of the Western MMOs as well, getting into World of Warcraft, seeing the differences between the two.
Wow, and he still chooses Final Fantasy over World of Warcraft.
I mean, here in Japan from the Western market, because, yeah, it is for everyone in the globe. I mean, it's very first MMORPG on the console, PlayStation 2. And also, I mean, it was.
That's actually crazy. I did not know it was on
MMO
PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2
an MMO?
Xbox 360.
That's actually crazy.
The obvious one is the most Japanese people don't very like to chat in public.
Right.
So, I mean, in the world, there's a lot of characters, but it's very quiet because people are using a tell instead of say or shout, and then. But if you go to the Western world, game world, I mean, every single one is shouting around it. So yeah, that's a huge difference.
While in the West, you have your EverQuests and you had your Ultima Online.
EverQuest.
In Japan, there was none of that. And then, so Final Fantasy XI was really one of the first MMOs in Japan. And so getting to work with basically the pioneers of the Japanese MMO.
Yeah, I think it's good that they play WoW and Final Fantasy.
It was possibly kind of a curse.
So they know
in the sense that
what they could do differently, what people like and don't like about World of Warcraft versus Final Fantasy,
what a Japanese
so on and
MMO
so forth
should be.
I think it's a good idea.
Not having played an MMO before, getting on this team and thinking, okay, this is an MMO, and translating away and working in that project, I kind of started thinking, okay, this is what an MMO is, this is what an MMO is. And then that one day I start playing WoW and it's like, seeing the differences between the two and saying like, okay, what I thought was the norm in Final Fantasy XI, the grinding for 20 hours to go up one level and then only to have your level drop when you pull too many crabs and it kills you.
Oh my god, they
have
have that kind of leveling in Final Fantasy?
That was normal, and then you're like, that's not normal, is it?
Oh.
The Japanese.
I was gonna say, what? That's crazy if that's in Final Fantasy.
And they were working on
maybe
the
not
first
want to play.
expansion pack, Rise of the Zalart. I was part of the
that
team
was in Final Fantasy
working
XI.
to get, the base game and Rise of Zalart all translated before the Japanese Rise of Zalart was finished, so we could all release at the same time.
Right. Did you get it on time?
I got it on time. I haven't missed a deadline yet. That's one thing I'm proud of.
Final Fantasy XI was a huge success for Square Enix. It established a concurrent user base of around 250,000 players for years. It was the most profitable Final Fantasy game ever, and at one stage was the 6th most popular game on all of Xbox Live. More than that, it established the Japanese style of MMO. And when the decision was made in 2005 to start work on a sequel, the new MMO was built around things that made 11 successful, focusing, like most Final Fantasy games do, on beautiful graphics and an interesting battle system. This new game was to be directed and produced by the same duo that shipped 11,
series veteran Hiromichi Tanaka and Nobuaki Komodo.
Final Fantasy XIV was announced for Windows and PlayStation 3 in 2009, but behind the scenes the development team was struggling to put the pieces of its new world together.
ファイナルファンタジー14のその最初のバージョンの、自分が見た時の一番大きな問題点、最終的にそれ が問題だったと考えているものっていうのは、その最初のコンセプトとしてそのプランナーがスクリプトを書くことによってゲームを作っていこうで、利点としては、プランナーが考えて自分たちで実装するんで高速な開発ができる。要はそうじゃないと基本的にはプランナーさんはものを考えて開発者にエンジニアに相談してどう実装するかを決めて、でゲームデザインをする人はそのどういうパラメータをいじりたいかとかを相談しながらエンジニアと話をしてものを作っていかなきゃいけないんですけれども、そこの部分に関してスクリプトを導入すると自分で考えて自分で実現することができるようになるっていう発想で、ゲーム実装の大半がスクリプトで組まれてたんですね。でそのスクリプト UI の問題もそうなんですけれども、ゲームも UI も基本的にはスクリプトで書かれていて、スクリプトを動かすエンジン側がかなり負荷が高いというか CPU をたくさん使わないと動かない状態になっているんで、ちょっとした何かをするだけでも、ゲーム内で少し何かをするだけでも非常に CPU リソースを使うことになっていて、すぐにサーバーが回るサイクルが遅くなっていくっていうことが問題として発生しています。
I didn't know that actually too many scripts makes the game lag.
サーバーでできることは少なくて、ゲームとしてサーバーで実現できるところは少ないですし、
Thank you for the
何
follow,
かしようと
Cash
すると
Gaming.
負荷が上がっちゃうんで、じゃあそれを回避するためにどうしようとかっていうことで、結果的にそのゲーム内容としてリッチなものが実現できなくなっている。
I guess it makes sense, yeah.
で UI もスクリプトで組まれている。
Yeah, too many scripts. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. But I mean, I just didn't really think it would actually affect that
Like I
much.
mentioned before,
If it's like little tiny
being in a
things.
position where we get to see all the parts come together first. We were
Was Final
some of the
Fantasy
first to
XIV on
realize
console?
that, Houston, we have a problem. That type of situation. I mean, you had the battle team. They're like, yes, we have this great battle system, with stamina.
PlayStation 3,
and
dang.
then you had the story team. Like, yes, we have this story. Oh, hey, we have these.
It's still on console?
All of these parts, and everyone was
Is it
really, really
playable?
proud of their parts. Look at this grass. It's so beautiful. Look at this barrel. It's the most beautiful barrel ever to be, represented in graphical form.
It's got as many polygons as the character.
Yes, and all of those parts, all of these teams, again, very, very proud of their work. I mean, you have the team.
You have it on PlayStation 5. It plays well?
Put together some of the best minds
Wow.
in Square Enix. You had people that were, leads that could probably even, lead their own projects, were all come together, and it became a lot of just tiny
Playing an
little
MMO on a
groups making
controller,
something
that
was
actually
really great.
sounds fucking,
But once you
that
put it
sounds like a
together,
grief.
It was kind of a mess. And no one really knew that, except for localization and probably QA as well. And we're like, okay, we need to do something.
So this
but
is how
by
Final
then it
Fantasy
was one of
died.
those, it's kind of too late to do
Right?
anything. But for us, we would be looking at the text, and some of it, it wouldn't make sense, or it would just be very bland, and thinking, if there's any way to make this game better, what can we do? It's like, well, I can take this text and maybe add some more stuff into it, add some more flavor to it, and maybe that will distract people from the fact that
I played Final Fantasy on my PS4 before I swapped to
At a
PC.
fundamental level,
I'm
the
sure it's probably
piecemeal design
better
of the
on
game was
PC,
causing
but
problems. Graphics were inconsistent.
That's
While many
crazy.
elements of the world were copy and pasted ad nauseum, some environmental objects had as many polygons and shaders as a character model. The battle system was just
Wow, that's
confusing.
crazy.
The game didn't have elements fundamental to most modern MMOs, things like jumping, auto attack, and the ability to interact with the map using a mouse. It had a system that nerfed hardcore players to make sure they didn't level up too fast. The UI was confusing, crafting was incredibly complex and took forever, and simply there just wasn't enough content. The closed beta wasn't going well. They needed more time to fix these problems, so the open beta was pushed back to within a month before launch. The team knew there were problems, and they were getting frustrated.
Did
they have to rewrite the entire fucking game?
大体その2010年の1月から
They lack
実際にリリー
cohesion?
スされる 8月ぐらいまでの
Yeah,
間
they
になっていたこと
probably.
で
That's what he said. They barely talked about it,
ゲームが
right?
本当に良くないっていうのがこう
Like they just
みん
didn't
な
really
に
talk
認
with
識
each
されて
other.
自覚されていくっていうのは結局ベータが始まって製品版が始まってっていう8月9月10月ぐらいまでの期間に起きたことなんですね。で実際にはこうチーム内の意識としてもリリース前そのベータが始まる前から本当に
They built 2.0 from the ground up while also patching 1.0.
チーム全体で
Wow.
そのオフィシャルであったわけではないんですけれども、開発者の中ではやはりその 世に出していくクオリティかどうかっていうところは議論がありました。
That's actually insane.
When 1.0 was getting made, was the mentality that, oh, we're not like, that's like their thing and we have our very own successful thing over here, we're going to just make another one of those?
Right, and that's really what it felt like, is that we're going to continue doing what we did because it succeeded before. Why wouldn't it succeed again?
2 games at once, that's actually fucking crazy.
You know, them taking that direction, and
they had to like
knowing that
they had to have made their team bigger, right?
Yes,
did they not hire more people on their team?
Seeing the success that they had,
or was it just the original fucking developers?
Seeing these great creators, you know, creating
that entire
something
time
that was, I mean, revolutionary. But then on the other hand, knowing that what they were doing was, yeah, but maybe that worked 6 or 7 years ago, but a lot of things have changed since then. And I mean, I think there was even one guy on the localization team that got to that point where he just got so frustrated that he just wrote this scathing mail and sent it out to the whole team before telling anyone else on localization he was going to write it. And then we all get it at the same time, the devs team. We're reading, it's like, wow, this is really terrible. I hope he doesn't, oh, he sent it to the whole team. Because he just got really frustrated because he could, to him, I mean, they were being very stubborn. They weren't, you know, they hadn't moved on. Whereas the rest of the world had moved on and adapted, you know, with the release of WoW and what they had done. Whereas, you know, the team here was like, no, we're going to stick with what we know, and that's good enough.
Then start feeling more concerning the
So wait,
situation.
did WoW come?
Is it not fixed? Not fixed?
Final Fantasy
not
came
fixed?
before WoW?
You
Final Fantasy 14?
announced the launch date, but it's not fixed. So, yeah, but still, some major portion of people are still thinking, believing. No, it's
it must have been like a patch for WoW or a new raid or something.
Better. So it could be, I mean, fixed or changed at the launch timing.
Kind of went from thinking, okay, this project's going to be great, to, uh-oh, there might be some problems. Can we fix them? Can we fix them? Okay, we can't fix them. Is there anything we can do? I don't know. It was, yeah. It was a very taxing experience.
Yeah, 1.0 was around 2010.
The team crossed their fingers and hoped that the game's beta problems were simply that, the same issues that most MMOs have. Ones that could be fixed with patches once the game entered live operations. And so Final Fantasy XIV Online launched on September 30th, 2010. It sold well its first week, and after a month had over 600,000 players swarming into its world. But it didn't take long for the cracks to appear. The problems in the beta were echoed by new players. The game was sluggish, the servers crashed, and Eorzeans quickly ran out of things to do. Quests were limited, and the fatigue system even made grinding for XP next to impossible. Critics ate it alive too.
Let's get right down to it. Unless you've got the patience of Job or some kind of masochist, you shouldn't play Final Fantasy XIV. Its problems are so vast that I could spend hours talking about
that's actually so sad.
The awful interface, the recycled content, the stringent limits on questing, the useless maps, the stupid market ward. These issues and dozens more constantly have you asking that age-old question, what were they thinking?
What? That is so sad.
So, what was it like seeing public reaction?
Oh my god, that's so disheartening.
It was very, I mean, very disheartening.
Wow!
Because, you know, you'd want to look at those and you'd want to say, no, they don't understand. They don't know, you know, what's going on here. Or
my brain is fucking
but
huge.
But deep down, you'd know they were right.
thinking the same thing.
And that was what kind of, you know.
Yo, what's up, Chuck?
That dagger in your heart and it's twisting because, you know, you want to defend what you worked on. I mean, the people that I worked with are the greatest people. I mean, I still, you know, work with a lot of them. I had worked with them before in FF11. I consider them not only co-workers but friends.
This guy seems like such a nice,
you know,
genuine guy. That's so sad.
Online, you know, bashing the work they did, and I know how hard they worked. I know how many hours they put in. I know that, like, in the last
my god, that's so
3 or 4
sad.
months, people were basically living at work, all putting their 100% into this game that was, you know, destined to kind of crash and burn. And then to have people online just say, oh, that sucks, this person is a piece of shit, and their work is terrible. It hurts, but it hurts more because if I was not here and was a user and had played that game, I probably would have said the same thing.
そうですね。
Yeah.
当時はね、CFO やってたんで。
This does sound like another company. This sounds like World of Warcraft, and it actually makes me feel a little bad, only because Dude, do you know how many people fucking say shit about World of Warcraft? Literally, there's videos like that every single fucking day. It actually makes me rethink about how I want to say shit about games. Because realistically, they put their fucking all into these games. I'm willing to bet, like, Blizzard developers probably do the same thing. Obviously, before the allegations, now there's taking a break. But before the allegations, they really did put their all into Blizzard and World of Warcraft because that was their fucking life. That was their dream to be on the World of Warcraft team. It's actually kind of sad. It's a really sad story.
ごたごた一番違うっていうのは、11の時はいろいろごたごたあったけど、ゲームに関して言うと、さすがに相当やっぱり相程度やっぱり受け入れファン相当のやっぱり評価されたんですよね。で、まあオペレーション上のねトラブルとかっていろいろ多分あるっていうのは、まあこれはある程度つきもので、まあ大変だったんですけれども、それはあったんですけど、ゲーム内容に関して言うと。非常に評価されたというふうに理解してますけれども、前作の場合の一番やっぱ私はちょっとまずいなこれって思ったのはやっぱりゲーム自体の評価が非常に厳しいものだったということですね。これはちょっとやっぱりそれは大丈夫かなというのをローンチした後ね、やっぱりそこはね非常にリアルに感じましたね。それはそうですね、まあローンチして、まあしばらく経って、まあそんなに長い期間じゃなかったですね。そうしばらくなんでやっぱり相当このままで大丈夫なのかという。
Which one is Yoshi P?
I mean, the first few months.
I want to see Yoshi P. So far, I fucking
translating apology.
I love Koji.
Mails from producers and directors.
He's so personable.
And finding out, trying to figure out different ways of saying we're sorry. Because the more you say it, the less weight it has. But Japan being a country where people apologize a lot, that's part of the culture. But then trying to translate that, it's like, okay, this is the 10th time I've said sorry in this one post, and then
wow, yeah, like just this entire company is way more personable than World of Warcraft.
The more you apologize, the more, and then trying to explain that to the team, like, no, we have to apologize. Like, yes, you have to apologize, but and it just became we weren't talking about the game anymore. We were talking about how to translate apologies, and it seemed like that lasted for
wow, that's
a couple months.
So sad.
Actually, we see a huge drop. I mean, right after the launch timing, we got some good number of the subscribers. Then that fall. I mean, as you can imagine. So I mean, it was failure, and we announced failure. So we see lots of decline.
さっきも話した通り、実際にはその開発内でも今リリースすべきかっていうか、リリースできるクオリティにあるかっていうのはベータ直前とかベータが始まってもそうなんですけど、常に疑問はあったので、リリースして実際にただそれまでにチーム内にあった空気はやはり出したら意外と
Koji's a singer in their music group?
あるんじゃないかっていう
That's pretty cool.
漠然とした出せばどうにかなるのかも、自分たちが思っているほど悪くないのかもっていう何の根拠もない希望的なものがあったんですよ。で出た結果結局そんな魔法は起きなくて、やはり自分たちが感じている通りにまだ世に出すには早いというか、世に出せるクオリティに
Square actually came out with a public apology on the news with a press
気持ちはみんなに
conference.
あったんで、実際に改善しなきゃっていうか、
You've never seen
根
WoW
本
do
的に
that.
対応しなきゃいけないっていうところはチーム内に割とすぐ広がったと思ってます。なので特にすごいそんなことはないっていう意見がすごく強くあって、誰かを説得しなきゃいけないみたいなことは特になかったですね。
Yeah, the people on this team are just way more personable than fucking Blizzard. Like, you look at the people in Blizzard, they literally are just straight-faced and look like fucking snakes.
Floors in a modern office complex in Shinjuku,
but these
Tokyo.
guys actually like have true feelings and actually care about the player base, which is...
And while Final Fantasy XIV was being developed, in another part of the building, a different game was being made. Produced by a Final Fantasy fan, his name, Naoki Yoshida.
Yoshi?
一番最初はファミリーコンピューター
Is this Yoshi?
エンターテインメントシステムかのマリオブラザーズが一番最初にプレイしたゲームです。とにかくテレビの中、テレビっていうのは見るものだと思っていた子供の時に、ところがマリオブラザーズで初めてコントローラーを握ってゲームをプレイした時に、まずそもそもテレビのものを自分が自由に動かせるっていうことがものすごいショックで、友達の家でプレイさせてもらったんだけど、ものすごい興奮したのを覚えてます。 ドラゴンクエストっていう日本で RPG を大きく広めたタイトルを初めて触った時にアクションではないゲーム、数字のやり取りでこんなにまたさらにゲームは面白くなるんだっていうのを、特にストーリーラインがあってっていう、また次のカルチャーショックを受けて RPG っていうジャンルにものすごく
Yeah, it was an RPG game in Japan. Dragon Quest, I think.
ことになったかなとは思います。当然その翌年に出たファイナルファンタジーにもその映画的なその演出、ファンタジーをより強く打ち出したっていうところにもすごい衝撃を受けてたので、やっぱり僕の中でドラゴンクエストとファイナルファンタジーっていうのはすごい大きかったですね、当時。
Wow.
Like most Japanese players at the time, Yoshida-san played all the early Final Fantasy games. He holds them in high regard, though he still holds the bitter memory of not being able to save before the last dungeon in Final Fantasy III.
No!
But when he was 11 years old, a brand new type of gaming experience arrived at his home.
That's the worst.
His uncle gave him a PC. On this PC, the young gamer learned how to program BASIC. His first video game centered around trying to break into a bank vault. But this PC also exposed him to a spectrum of gaming that eluded most Japanese players. Western role-playing.
The same guy that wrote Dragon Ball Z was the one that made
stunned when he first went online
Dragon Quest?
and played with other players.
That's fucking crazy, actually.
ウルティマオンラインをベータからプレイし、先輩にとにかくすげえゲームあるって言われて、ウルティマオンラインをベータから始めたのが初めて MMO をプレイした作品で、やっぱり同じようなその3回目の衝撃、3000人が同時に一つの世界で遊ぶっていうのがもうとてつもないまた衝撃でしたね。まあウルティマは本当に自由度のウルティマオンラインは特にとにかく初期は自由度がめちゃくちゃ高いゲームだったので、
They were role players. They were role players in fucking Ultima.
すごく紳士的なというかコミュニティリーダー的プレイをするキャラクターと完全に悪のプレイヤーキラーをやるキャラクターを2つ作ってどっちもものすごい遊んでたし、やっぱりその MMORPG っていうゲームがどう作られてるのか、
Wow, I've actually never even heard of Ultima until this video.
ものすごいそこで勉強させてもらったと思います。
It reminds me of RuneScape so much. What year did RuneScape come out?
同じぐらいの比重で PC でゲームをかなり遊ぶようになってたので、自分で PC パーツ買ってきて組み立てたりしてたし、
It was the MMO Grandpappy.
もかなりプレイし始めてたし、特に 3DMMO のスタートであるエヴァクエスト、その後
Ultima is at least 80% of the reason WoW exists.
エヴァクエストのパッ
Wow,
ケージを日本で
I
手
guess
に
you
入
can
れ
say
る
that
の
about
が本当に
every
大変で、
MMO, can't you?
出張で東京に来た時に
I actually have never heard of it until this
ゾンビ
video.
のように店をこう
It's
うろう
actually
ろしてエヴァクエストってゲームないですかね。
Yeah, I didn't even know about
エヴァクエスト
EverQuest
って
until chat said something. That's actually crazy. I thought
Yoshida-san would embark on
it
a
was
career in
always
games that would eventually see him
RuneScape was
joining
first.
Square Enix to work on the Dragon Quest series.
RuneScape and then WoW. I
Though he
thought
wasn't
RuneScape was
working on
the
Final
first
Fantasy
MMO.
team, he was part of the umbrella group that was allocating
So dumb,
programmers
holy
to
shit.
various projects. He didn't have granular visibility on FF14, but he knew the team was struggling. I asked from his perspective as a producer where he thought the game's problems were coming from.
まあわかんない、これ広報にカットされるのかもしれないけど、クリスタルツールズって呼ばれるミドルウェアを全社でその作ろうとしていたので、腕のいいプログラマーが全部そのチームに各なんだろうゲームラインから招集されて、そのメインプログラマーがみんないないっていう状態になってしまったので、どのプロジェクトもものすごい大変な時期だった。
Noffer, thank you for the follow. How are
オリ
you,
ジナルの
Noffer?
14がああなってしまった理由の一つでもあるかなとは思いますね。さらに2つ大きな問題がそこに絡まっていて、スクエアエニックスその全体にプレイステーション2
Yeah, a
の
lot
ジ
of
ェ
the
ネレ
Final
ーション
Fantasy
で
games, they weren't MMOs. They were just regular, like, role-playing games, right?
グラフィックスが
I do remember that
高い
much.
そしてゲームエクスペリエンスがものすごく詰まったゲーム
Was it until 11 where the
リリー
MMO
スした
came
の
out?
で、本当にこうなんていうんだろう、ある意味自信過剰にもうなっていた時期で、自分たちが世界一だし、自分たちのグラフィックスこそが世界一だし、その作り方は その自分たちにしかできない。
Thank you for the follow, Dex. How are you?
超巨大な成功体験ってやっぱり足かせというかにもなる例だと思うんですけど、ものすごくおごってた、まあ悪い言い方をすればおごってた時期だったと思うんです。
Whoa, not for you're an actual gamer?
例えるとその刀を作る刀匠のような職人たちが本当にたくさんいて、彼らが一つずつを手作りで作って世界一のクオリティを作り上げていたんだけど、実は世界は、まあ、特にその北米を中心にテクノロジーでそれをカバーするっていうところをずっと追求してきた時期で、プレイステーション3の世代になった瞬間にテクノロジーの方がそれを上回るっていう時期が来たせいで、
That's actually fucking crazy,
作り
dude.
方を変えようとはしない。
Dude, that story's actually kind of sad. It actually makes you think about like how you fucking talk to developers for even WoW. I don't know, man. It's actually kind of sad. It gets better, dude. I'm growing fucking gray hair right now. I just saw the best part. I saw how they failed. Or, well, the saddest part, I should say.
それを知ってるはずのプログラマーたちはミドルウェアの制作に行ってるっていう状態で、でもグラフィックス作ってるそのアーティストたちは自分たちの作り方こそが世界一だと思ってるので、古い作り方で引き続きものすごく負荷のかかるやり方でアセットを作ってたので、もうそれらが絡まって、
So that's just how they failed, is that they tried creating the best graphics, which they did, but
さっき2つあるって言った問題の
1
つ目がそれですね。
that was one of the biggest problems.
もう一つはプライドはいついかなる時でもとても大切なものだとは思うんですけど、そこにやっぱり超巨大な成功体験をしたっていうこと自体が乗っかってきちゃうと、その自分たちの作るゲームこそがベストであって、
Yeah, they really, they do. They just are so personable. They really are down to fucking earth.
例えば当時世界
It's like, it really is just a breath of fresh air. It's crazy. It's completely different from WoW.
世界最大の MMORPG は何ですかって言ったら、100人に聞いたら100人がワールド・オブ・ウォークラフトって言ったはずなのに、誰もプレイしてない開発チームが。これはワールド・オブ・ウォークラフトを知ってるか知ってないかっていう話だけの話をしてるんじゃなくて、その自分たちが世の中に対して新しいビデオゲームをリリースしようとするときにライバルになるタイトルは何だろうとか、ユーザーは今プレイヤーはどこにそのゲームエクスペリエンスの最新の状態をプレイしてるんだろうっていうのを知らないっていうのが、その感覚として僕には結構信じられない。なんでもっとみんなゲームプレイしないの？だって自分たちが今どの辺りにいるか分かんなくなっちゃうよっていうのがまあ言いたい。で特に14の場合に関してはもちろんファイナルファンタジー11の超巨大な成功体験っていうのが邪魔をしたっていうのもあるとは思うんだけど、あの当時はエヴァークエストを徹底的にプレイをして、
I guess you could say the same about the newest
新しいレストランを
CEO of
オープンするときに隣にあるレストランがどんなメニューを出していて、どんなサービスをしているかを知らずにレストランを作る。
It's new for WoW. It's new to see that, so everyone's hyped up that
so,
there's a CEO that plays World of Warcraft with regular people now.
Within Square Enix?
Like, it shouldn't be a new concept that we see. It should be just like Final Fantasy.
Anticipating that there would be negative feedback, or were they less aware that that was going to happen? I guess.
僕は他のチームにいて、
Yeah, he plays at a decently high level. Yeah. Is that his name? Quick? Yeah, the dude's fucking actually a pumper.
多かれ少なかれ MMORPG のローンチは絶対にまあ荒れやすい、そのサーバーがすぐ落ちるとか、まあストレステストをやってるけど、プレイヤーの方は遊びたいからやっぱりサーバーが落ちるとやっぱりすごく文句を言って当然だと思いますし。
It's just crazy that it's a new concept for WoW to see that the CEO or the higher ups of Blizzard actually play their games. Like, have you seen on Twitter? Everyone's freaking out that he plays the own game, the game that he works on. But like Final Fantasy, they've experienced this the entire careers of Final Fantasy. I don't know. It's just crazy.
ただ別の角度、今度はそのオリジナルの14チームの中のその視点としては、 このままだと本当にまずいもっと時間をかけて品質を上げないとっていうもちろん声を上げる人たちもいたけれど会社ってまあ全体の判断としてはファイナルファンタジー11のスタートもそうだったと機能たくさんなかったしものすごくネガティブなフィードバックもたくさん来たけどパッチでどんどん直していって11は完成したんだから14も大丈夫だと最初は絶対こうなんだっていうふうに判断したのでベータを終わらせてリリースへ踏み切ったっていうのが当時のジャッジだったって僕はチームに入ってからインタビューをしてそれを確認したのでチームの中ではやっぱり議論はあったそうですあのままじゃダメまずいっていう話はただ最終的なジャッジは今お話しした通り11の時もそうだったでも11だってずっとパッチを続けてああなったじゃないかと
Eventually, corporate realized that this wasn't usual launch problems, so they called on a few select members of the team to create a task force. This task force would research what changes the game needed and the resources the development environment would require to do the work. Members of that team would talk to Yoshida-san about their worries after hours. His thoughts were that the current organizational structure would need to be modified if the team was going to make the changes required.
Dude, how did they change this game and continue the next
and suggested they
patch?
initiate a company-wide emergency
like how did they
to get
fix
the team the
their game and also do the
Wada-san
next
spent
patch
a few
of the
days
game
talking to the
at the same time? That's like actually insane.
Concerns. And while a lot of the team had suggested that the current task force was in fact up to the task, some members of the 14 team had pleaded to have Yoshida-san join the project to help. And so it transpired that in late November, corporate took the decision to remove Hiromichi Tanaka from the team and move Nobuaki Komodo from director to lead designer. Both of their vacant positions would be filled by Yoshida-san. At that time, he was leading a team that was working on an original IP for Square Enix. He was disappointed to leave that team, but excited for the opportunity to work on one of the company's crown jewels, a numbered Final Fantasy game. So, he got right to work.
やらなきゃいけないことが当時3つあって
This guy's a fucking god!
まあ順番にやってったんですけど
He fucking took both of their positions! What the fuck?
まあオリジナルのチームにトップが変わりますであとそのタスクフォースメンバーもそのまま開発コアとしてリードに入りますっていう当然話をしなきゃいけない全チームにただ僕はドラゴンクエストのゲームを開発することが多かったので
This guy's actually insane. This guy's a fucking robot.
というかまあ顔と名前ぐらいは知ってるスタッフはいたけどその一緒に仕事したことがある人がほとんどいなかったのでまず Say hello っていうところからで一度もみんな仕事したことがないからどんな仕事をする人間なのかを見てくれればいいよってまずで
What?
こいつダメだって
He literally said if you don't like what I do, just fucking leave.
構わないからっていう話を最初にして一緒に仕事してみようでも1回はいいよねってでそれでダメだと思ったら本当すぐ抜けて構わないから3ヶ月ぐらいまず一緒にやろうよっていう話を僕スピーチでした記憶がありますでまあもう1回チャレンジするよ。まあ、
What, did he fucking turn it around?
申請するなんて話はまだ計画がなかったので、とにかく立て直しをやるよと、ギブアップはしないよっていう話をしたときに、僕を知ってる何人かは、よしやるぞっていう人たちと、もう無理だよっていう人たちと、なんだよこの急な体制変更って言ってまあ怒ってる雰囲気の人たちと。っていうのが大体のその時の雰囲気でした。
Yeah, they probably just thought he was putting too much work on the team, but
14のサウンドディレクターやってる総研が、まあその話をしてた時と大きなホール
he
だ
was
ったんですけど。
like just trying to show them that we're actually just a
僕のマイク
team.
の調整とかやってくれてて。
Like he just thought everyone thought, oh, you're putting too much work on me, on me, on me.
っていうかその。
But he's trying to show them that they're just a team.
ガッツポーズしてたのはあいつだけです。今でも覚えてますよ。2階席でおっしゃーってやってたんであいつ。
I saw both reactions.
So
I saw the, oh my God, we just went through a year of hell and now he's asking us to go through a year and a half of hell to this point that might, be another failure because, no one had taken a game and rebuilt it in this manner before. So basically saying like, yeah, you just have to trust me and yeah, you could, waste another year and a half of your life and it could be a failure, and but you're gonna have to believe me on this one. And so yeah, a lot of people are like, I can't do this anymore, I don't know. And I can understand that, because again, it was a gamble. But then on the other hand, there were, a lot of us, myself included, but a lot of people on the team that were like, no, we worked so hard on this and we did our jobs the best that we could, but for a lot of reasons, some circumstances that were out of our control, decisions made by higher ups, decisions made by other teams that affected our work, and nothing that we could do about it. But we had put our all into it, and we were invested in the project. We still believed in the project. To have someone from the outside come in, and not just come in to say, okay, forget it, we're just going to do it my way or the highway. He's like, he asked our opinions. He laid out a roadmap.
Dude!
He gave us a vision and a hope. And even though it seemed like it would be difficult to achieve, it didn't seem inconceivable.
Yoshi P knew there was no time to wait. He worked with corporate to make sure the team had time off, both for them to relax, but also to give him time to build his new vision, to do research playing other MMOs, and to help draft his plan, to deliver the vision and how the team was going to do it. They had very little time to fix this game, so once they started, the specifications document
Did this guy even sleep?
And as captain of the ship, he needed to be able to answer every question the team may have, quickly.
Yoshida-san was now at the helm of his first Final Fantasy, and as an avid MMO fan, he was looking forward to getting in there and fixing it. What he couldn't have known at this stage was the scale of the job ahead of him, that no matter how much they patched Final Fantasy XIV Online, they couldn't ever fix it. What they
I want to play
have
this
to
game
do
just
was
for
something
Yoshi.
that no developer had ever done, to rebuild an entire MMO while the original version was still running.
I don't think that they realized immediately that it was something that couldn't be solved via patches. I think they still believe that if we patch it, it'll be fine. And it wasn't until they reevaluated and then brought in the new blood. Yoshida-san came in and told them, okay, yeah, this is not something that can be patched. If we want to fix this, we're going to have to take a drastic step.
Dude, they actually had to fucking do...
7 weeks researching and returned with 2 options for corporate. It was then he realized that it would be impossible to convert the current game into an MMO that could last the test of time. Ultimately, though, this was a decision that corporate had to make. So he returned with not 1, but 2 plans. Plan A and Plan B. During this meeting, he explained that Plan A would be to patch the game and make it more playable, but that ultimately the game would never really satisfy players, and though Square Enix may make their money back, the damage to the online brand would be catastrophic. And
Is that not World of Warcraft?
There was Plan B.
今のファイナルファンタジー4、当時のオリジナルのファイナルファンタジー14をパッチを当てて、
Yo, that's World of Warcraft, dude.
そのできる限りポジティブに遊べるものにしながら裏で全く新しいそのファイナルファンタジー14をもう一度作り直すっていうのがプラン B で、その話だけを聞くと、そんなバカなってなるので、当然どうやってそれを達成するか、チームを2つに分けて、でどういったそのマネジメントスタイルでそれをやるのかで、大体発売時期はプレイステーション3版をリリースするっていうのがプレイヤーとの約束だったので、プレイステーション3の寿命が来る前にリリースしなきゃいけないので、2012年年末から2013年中には絶対リリースできるこの計画であればっていうプレゼンテーションをして、リスクは高い、ただ当然そんなことをしたことはない。
Dude, this guy is actually...
しかも同じタイトルで作り直して
I'm realizing everything now. I've been so in the dark for so long.
ただ少なくとも
This is actually like fucking mind
ファイナル
blowing.
ファンタジーってクレイジーだねとかすごいことするね
This
とか
guy did not fucking sleep.
少な
He
くと
did
も自
not
分たちがミ
sleep.
スしたことを認めて
Like,
信頼を取り戻そうとした
he played other
努力は
games just to see
見てくれてる人は
how
多分
to
見てくれ
change
るだろ
Final
う
Fantasy.
だからどっちを
Like
チョイスするか
how?
は
How do you have time to play games? That literally means you have to level up through the fucking game just to experience most of it.
まあ
Most
結
of
果的に
it.
はね、プラン B でって言ってくれたんで今こうなってますけど
Here we are today. Wow. That's freaking crazy.
Final Fantasy XIV 1.0 was in a state of disarray. Square Enix had decided to suspend subscriptions to help ease the negativity around the game, while the PS3 version was indefinitely postponed. For the next 2 years, Yoshida-san and his team would work tirelessly on not one, but 2 MMOs, patching the original 1.0 to fans' expectations, while secretly working on a brand new version of Final Fantasy XIV. In our next episode, we focus on that 2-year period and tell the incredible story of the falling moon.
That's fucking crazy. Dude, that story is actually insane. What the fuck? Dude, Yoshi P. Holy shit. That guy is a fucking robot. No, we're not doing the next episode. I want to make a character right now. That was actually fucking insane.